be united here. I first would like to thank all of you for taking your time to come here. I know Sunday is an off day in Abuja. You see that in the highway, there's not a single car, mashallah. One of the Sheihk was saying, I love Sundays because there's nobody out in the streets, everybody's at home. So alhamdulillah, we thank all of you for attending and taking your time to come here, especially with your families. I myself, this is my first time, alhamdulillah, I've been very happy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us to come here and see you all and visit Abuja, inshallah. This is not the first or the last trip, inshallah. I'd also like to thank the organizers, mashallah, they did an amazing job, the volunteers. Allah bless them and their families, and all of you. First question, inshallah, that I've received here is a question which we leave off this, subhanAllah, the same kind of question that Sheikh Hasib was discussing. I have a bad addiction of listening to music. I feel ashamed of this. What measures can I take to stop? So with regards to music, a lot of us need to understand the level of reality of this topic as well. Many of world cultures use music to get a message across and to maybe get people to reflect on their emotions, and a lot of people are very attached to the concept of music. There's many scholars that discuss music. It even was in the time of the Sahaba all the way till now. There's many great scholars which discuss it. And the way the scholars used to discuss it is how your heart is attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how can it be attached to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they made it a spiritual discussion mostly, not a discussion of sometimes the ruling in ahkam. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said, al-baytu, al-qalbu, baytu rabbi jalla jalaluhu. He said the heart is the sanctuary of Allah. This is where you have all of the attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, so don't attach yourself to something that will take you away from Allah. Look at the way the scholars worded it. So when someone is so attached to something that it takes them away from Allah Azza wa Jal, this becomes problematic, not just music, but anything. Anything. It can lead even, for example, a man or a woman who has so much love, that this love leads them away from Allah. This love will make them miss salah. This love will make them, almost as if seeking the pleasure of that person over the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one of the things that we need to do is to increase our love and our connection with Allah Azza wa Jalla. The more you're connected with Allah, the more you want Allah's pleasure. The more you are connected with what Allah guides us, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rulings and what He wants and His commandments and His prohibitions become beloved to us, become more important to us than things that we want, things that we like. And remember, on this topic, the scholars agree that listening to music is not a major sin. There's an ijma', there's a consensus. So sometimes what happens is we make an issue out of a haram, and we think that this is the main aspect where all of Islam is focused on. And I call it the 5 M's of confusion. Okay? The 5 M's of confusion. 5 things that many of the Muslim community, they over-focus on. These are important things, but they make it such that as if the entire religion is surrounded around these 5 things. And these 5 things usually in a Muslim minority country, in like America or Britain, for example. The number one issue people argue about in America and these places is meat. Okay? Is the meat halal? Is the meat not halal? And this is like the biggest thing. I always ask questions about meat. Number 2, music. Music. Sheikh, is music halal or music haram? Number 3, madhab. Sheikh, should we follow madhab? Should we not follow madhab? Number 4, moon. I call it moon fighting, not moon sighting. When does Ramadan start? When does it end in the Muslim Ummah? And we have a fight and discussion over it. Okay? And there's more M's, right? Marriage is a big M everyone asks about. Okay? The Mawlid, the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a big M. How does it make sense, my brothers, my sisters, that we're fighting over how we love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Does this make sense to you? How is it that we're fighting over an aspect which is a part of Islam? But we make such a huge deal out of it, it has actually led people to split the family. Or even worse, arguments with their spouses. So we have to understand this in context. We have to understand this in context. We're a faith that always takes into consideration there is an action part of Islam, and there is also the ruh, the objective of Islam. So we don't lose our Islam based on finding a spirit and there's no action. And we also don't focus on such a mechanic that we lose the spirit and purpose behind things. When it comes to the question of your addiction, this is more of a problem than simply saying, I listen to music. What is it that you're addicted to? What is your heart taking you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The first question that we always have to ask ourselves is, how am I with the salah? How am I with the one thing that is the most important thing in Islam? As-salah imaduddin. The prayer is a pillar of the faith. So this is the first and foremost thing. This is the first and foremost thing. How are you with your prayer? There was a man in Houston, Texas. He came to me and he said, I need to speak to you, Sheikh. I said, Tfadal. He started to speak, started to cry. And he said, my daughter has taken off her hijab and I want you to speak to her. So I let him finish everything that he's saying. And then I said, I want to ask you a few questions before, I take your, request. Number one, what is your relationship with your daughter? Do you spend time with her? Do you take her out on dinner dates? Do you tell her that she's beautiful? Do you make her feel comfortable to share her views and maybe her fears and some of the experiences that she goes with? Do you show her love? And he was quiet. I said, another question. How is her prayer? How is her prayer? Does she pray regularly? He said, no. I said, do you know what you're asking me? You're asking me, like many of these questions that we sometimes receive, you're asking me to put a band-aid on a wound when there's a tumor in the heart. You want to cover the wound, but not deal with the tumor. You know what the tumor is? Our distance from Allah Azza wa Jal. Our connection with Allah that will heal all of these wounds. And I wanted him to realize something. Your relationship with your family and how you speak to people is more important than sometimes some acts which are not okay. You know why? Because if you are somebody they trust, they love, they know that you're genuine, you care about them, then they will want to come to you for your advice. But if you're sitting like a person on a holy man on a hill or a holy woman on a hill and throwing texts at the people down below, no one will trust you. No one will believe you. And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam for 40 years spent in Medina guarding the trust of people because of his akhlaq, because of his manners with people, how he dealt with them. So when it comes to this issue, you ask yourself, where is the tumor in my heart? How is it distancing myself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How is my salah? More importantly, what is on your playlist? Who is on your playlist? Is the Quran even on there? Is it the top 10? Is the Quran even part of your life? Imam al-Hasan al-Basri, he said something beautiful like we mentioned earlier today. He said, whoever wants to know themselves, let them show themselves to the Quran. How much is your interaction with it? Do you have on your playlist a qari? Not just listening, but understanding the Quran. Do you have the tafsir of the Quran in your playlist? Are you listening to it? Are you understanding more? Is it implementing in your life? No, then you have to ask yourself, how much of this is beneficial? Not only that, how much of this is distancing you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the practical things is number one, increase your relationship with Allah. Increase. You can't tell somebody don't do something and it's not replaced with something. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, always when somebody came to ask him a question, he would say, listen, do this is better for you. So, slowly take away from your playlist and add to it Quran, add to it Islamic lectures, add to it beneficial things that will make you, inshallah ta'ala, more connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the more you're connected with Allah, you won't have time for anything that distracts you from it. Trust me. You won't, your body starts to feel discomfort. But this starts to build slowly and surely, inshallah ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us. How do you differentiate a ma'lam from a magician? Allahu Akbar. Because most of all of these ma'lams around are misleading people into shirk. And how does someone go back after realizing his ma'lam is more of a magician? Brothers and sisters, we have to be very careful where we take our faith from. Very careful. One of the great scholars, Muhammad ibn Sirin, said, look who you take your faith from, you ask your questions. Because this religion is based on the Prophet ﷺ said, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Look carefully to who you take your faith from. Don't go just to someone else, some random person you don't know. Because they may mislead you and they may harm you. They may harm you. Go to your scholars, your local scholars, Sheikh al-Fattah, and also the Ulama Council of Nigeria, the Sharia board. Go to your ulama and ask them. Don't go to random people. Don't, what we call milkshake discussions. You know the milkshake discussion? You gather around, everyone has a milkshake in their hand, everybody's a scholar. I think this, you think that. I give fatwa on this, you give fatwa on that, and nobody knows. Nobody knows, nobody has studied, nobody's qualified. Go to people who have these characteristics. Number one, they are qualified. Ask where they studied. Do you have a degree in Sharia? Who are your teachers? Where did you study from? We have something called an isnad, a chain of learning in Islam. I learned from teachers, from their teachers, from their teachers. I go all the way to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Does the person that you see, does he have that? Does he have that? Or does she have that? Where do they study? Number two, the attitude of the person is very important. Don't go to people who are divisive. All they do is talk about how somebody is on Islam or off of Islam. Their demeanor is negative. All they speak about is how somebody's actions are completely wrong or they're right. These type of people you should stay away from. Why? Because they will change you, make you toxic as well. Number three, someone that is relevant to you, your day-to-day life. If someone's speaking like they're on Mars or a different planet, how are they going to be relevant to your life? Right? So alhamdulillah, you have many scholars here, many scholars. Go to them, and especially, I want to warn my sisters and my brothers from people that will offer you some kind of spiritual or divine solution. This is very dangerous. The only spiritual divine solution we have is dua. You raise your hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no easy formula for getting married or trying to win somebody's love or having children. The formula is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the story of Nuh alayhi salam, he says to his people, I say to you, do constant istighfar. Istighfar, say, astaghfirullah, I seek forgiveness from Allah and I return to Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you children and will grant you wealth and will send rain from the skies. So this is a true story. My teacher, from Medina, he told me this. He said that there's a lady that she got recently divorced. She was widowed. Excuse me, not divorced. She was widowed. And she didn't know where to get her money. How will she make ends meet? So Sheikh said, do istighfar and work as much as you can. Inshallah, take care of your children. But do istighfar. So she said, and the number is not important, but this shows you how much the lady was doing istighfar. She said she would do istighfar 4,000 times a day. While she was cleaning, while she was taking care of her children. She said 6 months later, a man from the former job of her husband came, knocked on the door and gave her a letter and said, this is from the company of your husband. We just wanted to make sure that you all are taken care of, with a check of, I believe, over 100,000 riyals. Allah blessed this woman in her wealth. She said, I would have never imagined. من لزم الاستغفار يرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب. Who sticks to istighfar, Allah will bless them from areas where they never imagined. And another one of my teachers, personal teacher, he said that Allah tested them. They didn't have children for 9 years. 9 years. So he said, we tried everything. Obviously, Allah tells us if there's a disease or something that is wrong, you go to the doctor. You don't say, okay, Allah will give you from the sky. Of course not. You go take the meat. So he said, we went to the doctor. The doctor said there's nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with the man, nothing wrong with the woman. It's just from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they said he started to do istighfar, and he said 12,000 times a day. Again, the number is not important. I'm just telling you the story. It can be any time. 12,000 times him and his wife, Allah blessed them with children and 9 others. 9 others. What is the secret? One thing. Your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that whatever happens to you is in His wisdom and that He wants the good for you. Allah is preparing your happiness, maybe that's why you're here. Allah is preparing your future, even if you don't have children. Remember, Aisha never had a child. Remember that. Everything you base your life on is in trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us that kind of trust. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us away from the harms of this dunya and akhirah, and from those who are misleading others with the clothes of religion. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us away from them and to guide us to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sunnah and to bless us with his companionship. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.